The history of England is vast and fascinating, spanning thousands of years. In history of England, we saw the Mad King Henry VIII. We saw different arts, cultures, and abundance of art and wealth in the Victorian era, and everything takes England to another level. So today, we will look at the history of the whole England. Before I start, if you are new to the channel and love history, definitely subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. Thank you. Around 800,000 to 10,000 BC, early humans like Homo heidelbergensis lived here. Nomadic hunter-gatherers who moved around to find food. They used simple stone tool and fire for survival. During this period, the climate shifted drastically due to ice ages, making survival hard. People often followed animals and moved to warmer regions during colder times. Around 10,000 to 4,000 BC, ice age ended and the climate became warmer. Forests and rivers appeared. People began fishing, hunting smaller animals, and gathering plants. Around 4,000 to 2,500 BC, farming began. People grew crops like wheat and barley and raised animals like sheep and cattle. Villages were built as people settled down. Pottery was invented for storing food and water. This era saw the construction of Stonehenge, a mysterious stone circle, and other structures for religious or ceremonial purposes. Around 2500 to 800 BC, people discovered how to mix copper and tin to make bronze, a stronger metal than stone. Weapons, tools, and jewelry made of bronze became common. Around 800 BC to 43 AD, iron replaced bronze as the main material for tools and weapons because it was stronger and more widely available. Farming improved with iron tools and tribal kingdoms began to emerge. The people living in Britain were called the Britons. They were part of Celtic tribes who lived in small villages and practiced farming. They didn't have big cities or much written history. Britain was rich in resources like tin, gold, and iron. The Romans also wanted to expand their empire and gain more control over the world. The Romans, led by Emperor Claudius, invaded Britain in AD 43. They brought a powerful army, including soldiers and war machines. Britain became a part of the Roman trade network. Goods like pottery, wine, and olive oil came to Britain, while metals and wool were exported. Latin became the main language for government and trade, but the local Britons still spoke their own languages. The Romans brought new ideas like writing, law, and Roman religion. By the 4th century, the Roman Empire was weakening due to internal problems and attacks by outside groups. In AD 410, the Romans officially left Britain to focus on defending other parts of their empire. This left the Britons to defend them. The Anglo-Saxons were made up of 3 main tribes: the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes. They began settling in Britain after the Romans left, around 410 AD. These people brought their own language, customs, and beliefs, which shaped much of what became English culture. Society was divided into different classes. Kings ruled over territories called kingdoms. Thanes were noblemen who owned land and helped the king. Sheolds were free peasants who worked the land. Slaves were the lowest class and had no freedom. By the 7th century, Christianity spread through missionaries like St. Augustine, and churches became central to communities. Starting in the late 8th century, Vikings from Scandinavia began raiding and settling in England. The Anglo-Saxon language, Old English, became the foundation of modern English. The Normans came from Normandy, a region in northern France. They were originally Vikings but had settled in France and adopted French customs, language, and Christianity. William was crowned king on Christmas Day, 1066, in Westminster Abbey. He brought Norman culture, language, and laws to England, which mixed with the existing Anglo-Saxon traditions. William built many castles, including the Tower of London, to keep control over the land. The English language absorbed many French words, shaping the modern language we speak today. Feudalism, a system where land was exchanged for military service, became common. The Middle Ages began after the Norman conquest in 1066, when William the Conqueror defeated King Harold at the Battle of Hastings. William became king and introduced the feudal system, changing how England was ruled. Most people lived in villages and were farmers. Towns were small but grew slowly over time as trade increased. Castles were built to protect the land, and churches were the center of life. Religion was very important, and the Catholic Church had great power. Knights followed a code of honor called chivalry, which included bravery in battle and loyalty to their lord. Universities like Oxford and Cambridge were established. The Middle Ages ended with the Wars of Roses and series of battles between two powerful families, the Lancasters and the Yorks, over who should be a king. It ended with Henry Tudor becoming king in 1485, marking the start of the Tudor dynasty and the Renaissance period. Henry VIII founded the Tudor dynasty, made England peaceful and financially stable. Henry VIII, known for having 6 wives, broke away from the Catholic Church and created the Church of England because the Pope wouldn't let him divorce his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. The Tudors started exploring new parts of the world, leading to trade, colonization, and wealth. The Renaissance influenced art, music, and literature. The theatre became popular with playwrights like Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe. The Stuart Dynasty began when James VI became James I of England in 1603. He was the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, and he united the crowns of England and Scotland, creating a personal union between the two kingdoms. This period is also known as the Jacobean Era. James I is famous for his belief in divine right of kings, meaning he thought kings were chosen by God and should have absolute power. His reign saw the translation of the Bible into English, known as the King James Bible. Tensions between the monarchy and parliament grew as James spent a lot of money and was not popular with some English people. The English Civil War broke out in 1642 between supporters of Charles I and those who supported Parliament. In 1649, after losing the war, Charles I was executed. This marked a huge turning point in English history. After Charles I's execution, England became a Commonwealth, meaning it was ruled without a king. The country was led by Oliver Cromwell, a military leader who became the Lord Protector. Cromwell's rule was strict, with many religious and social reforms. However, Cromwell's death in 1658, the Commonwealth struggled, and the monarchy was restored in 1660. Charles II, the son of Charles I, was invited back to England, and the monarchy was restored in 1660. This period is known as the Restoration. His reign faced challenges including the Great Plague of 1665 and the Great Fire of London in 1666. James II, the brother of Charles II, became king in 1685. He believed in strong royal power and was a Catholic, which made many English Protestants nervous. After James II's abdication, his daughter Mary II and her husband William of Orange were invited to take the throne. The last Stuart monarch, Queen Anne, ruled from 1702 to 1714. Her reign saw the union of England and Scotland into Great Britain in 1707. After Anne's death in 1714, the Stuart line ended because she had no surviving children. The throne passed to the House of Hanover, with George I becoming king. The Georgian Era refers to a period in British history that lasted from 1714 to 1830. Named after the kings named George. There were 4 Georges who ruled during this time: George I, George II, George III, and George IV. This era is divided into different phases based on the reign of each king. The Georgian era began with George I, who came to the throne in 1714. He was from Germany, so he wasn't very familiar with British traditions. His reign marked the rise of parliamentary power over the monarchy, and the prime minister became more important in running the country. George II's reign saw the continuation of parliamentary power. He was the last British king to lead troops in battle, but his reign was more focused on the expansion of the British Empire, especially in America and India. George III's reign was long and full of significant events. It was during his rule that Britain fought the American Revolution, which led to the loss of the American colonies. Later in his life, George III suffered from a mental illness. Despite this, his reign saw the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, which transformed Britain's economy, technology, and society. George IV was known for his extravagant lifestyle. His reign is often seen as one of the indulgence and excess. While he ruled, there were major changes in culture, especially in art and architecture, with the construction of famous buildings like the Royal Pavilion in Brighton. Queen Victoria became queen in 1837 at the age of 18 and ruled for 63 years. Her reign saw the expansion of the British Empire and many changes in the way people lived. She is known for a strong sense of duty, family values, and moral principles. During the Victorian era, Britain was the most powerful country in the world. The British Empire controlled vast territories, including parts of Africa, Asia, the Americas, and the Pacific. It was often said that the sun never set on the British Empire because it was so large. The Industrial Revolution, which began in the late 1700s, continued into the Victorian era. This was when machines replaced hand tools, leading to the growth of factories. Cities grew rapidly as people moved from the countryside to work in factories. Railroads and steamships made travel faster and easier. Scientists like Michael Faraday and Thomas Edison made important discoveries in electricity, leading to the development of electric lights. The Victorian era produced many famous writers. Charles Dickens, the Bronte sisters, and George Eliot and Oscar Wilde were among the most popular authors of the time. Their books often focused on social issues like poverty, class, and injustice. The theatre was very popular during the Victorian era. People enjoyed plays, often with moral lessons or comic themes. While the rich got richer, many poor people lived in terrible conditions. There was overcrowding in cities, and people worked long hours for low pay in dangerous factory jobs. The Victorian era came to an end in 1901 with the death of Queen Victoria. The world had changed a lot during her reign, and the 20th century saw new challenges and even more rapid changes, particularly with the start of World War I. The early 20th century was known as the Edwardian Era, named after King Edward VII. This period was marked by luxury and class divisions, but there were also major social issues like the struggle for women's rights and poor living conditions for many. Women in England started campaigning for the right to vote with groups like the suffragettes leading protests. In 1918, women over 30 gained the right to vote. In 1912, the Titanic, a huge British passenger ship, sank after hitting an iceberg, killing over 1,500 people. This event shocked the world and led to improvements in maritime safety. England entered World War I in 1914 following the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. The war involved many countries and millions of soldiers and civilians died. The war changed life for many people in England. Women took on jobs traditionally done by men, like working in factories and serving in hospitals. Rationing and shortages became common. The war left England economically weak and in debt. There was also a deep sense of loss, as many young men died in battle. After the war, England saw a period of economic recovery. People enjoyed new freedoms like dancing to jazz music, and there was a sense of optimism. In the 1930s, the world faced a financial crisis, unemployment in England soared, and many people struggled to make ends meet. England went to war again in 1939 after Germany invaded Poland. The war affected everyone, with the air raids and bombings damaging cities like London. Many people were evacuated from the cities to safer areas. In 1948, the government introduced the NHS, providing free healthcare to all citizens. This was a major step in improving the quality of life for many people in England. After the war, England began losing its colonies, especially in Africa and Asia. India gained independence in 1947, and many other nations followed in the 1950s and 1960s. In the 1970s, England faced economic problems, including high inflation, unemployment, and strikes. This led to social unrest and changes in government. In 1979, Margaret Thatcher became the first female Prime Minister of the UK. She introduced conservative policies that changed the country's economy and society. Her focus on free markets and the privatization was controversial but had lasting effects. In 1982, England fought a brief war with Argentina over the Falkland Island. The British victory boosted national pride. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, marking the end of the Cold War. This had a major impact on England's foreign policy, as it signaled the end of the division between Eastern and Western Europe. By the late 1990s, England was becoming more diverse and modern. The economy had improved, and the country was becoming more open to global influences. The Labour Party, led by Tony Blair, won a major victory in 1997, signaling a new era for the country. Today, the UK Parliament, based in London, makes the country's law. It is made up of two parts, the House of Commons and the House of Lords. The Prime Minister, who is the head of government, is the leader of the political party that has the most seats in the House of Commons. While England has its own government for certain matters, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland have their own separate governments with powers in areas like education and health. Modern England is a mix of the old and the new, with a deep history and a focus on progress. It is a place of innovation, culture, and diversity while dealing with the challenges of a modern world. So far today, don't forget to tell us how you felt. What do you think about the history of England? I really want to know. Let me know in the comments and tell me which country history you want to hear about next. Thanks a lot for watching the full video. See you in the next video. Stay well.